Hey guys, Mutantcowboy here with another Division 2 Warlords of New York video. In this one, I'm basically just going to be covering some of the problems that I'm finding with the Title Update 8 or TU8 changes that they made, across the board to all the stats. And I don't really think that there's any more clear evidence of why the system is bad than just simply looking at the skill system itself. Now, I'm a primary skill build. I love my skill builds. I mean, there's no getting around that. And many of you may disagree with, skill builds and whatever role they play. That's fine. But I'm not really talking about the overall strength of the build itself. I'm not talking about the, OP nature of some things. I'm just simply going into why skills feel bad from a skill build perspective. And perhaps that might actually allow you to see what kind of deficiencies you can actually see in your own style. Well, if you're an armor build, what kind of limitations they have. Or if you're a weapon build, what kind of limitations that they have because of this new system. And again, I'm not really talking about, oh, this is an OP, so I hate it now. I'm just talking about the ability to customize and make the build unique to, the way that you actually want to play it as. And before I started off, I actually want to play a clip from one of my videos that I recorded in January, talking about, some of the limitations that I feel that this system was going to bring.
We're looking at going to 23 total options on our gear compared to having 26 in the current system. Now, when you compare it to the original 37 to 38 options, I mean, that's just ridiculous. What are we going to get next? Seriously? I don't understand their need to drive as much variety and selection and, RPG just depth to the game away. I don't understand why they're driving this so far away. I don't really know of people who are like, oh, well, stats are stupid. People like stats. People like getting options. And actually knowing about how to use these stats, knowing about what they do, is part of this skill gap that players have.
So what I was talking about was, basically proven true. They've reduced a lot of the options that you can actually choose as a player. Now, I'm not talking about, being able to invest in 100% of this, 100% of this, 100% of this. I'm just talking about being able to actually invest effectively into specific stats without being, dedicated to, I have to choose weapon damage, or I have to choose armor, or I have to choose this skill tier thing. You could completely avoid those options if you wanted to in the previous system. You could have chosen, hazard protection over armor. You could have chosen explosive damage resistance over armor. You could have chosen, a lot of crit chance and crit damage over weapon damage. You didn't have to pigeonhole yourself into these specific things, right? And a lot of the more unique builds actually invested a lot less into things like armor or skill power or just straight up weapon damage. You can't get away from that now. You have to invest in those stats. And the one thing that's really easy to notice is that skills themselves are incredibly restricted when you compare them to something like weapons. And the reason I say that is, you can take a look at all the stats that are available for these things that you can invest into, right? With weapons, you got, weapon damage, you got headshot damage, crit chance, crit damage, handling, stability, accuracy, reload, rate of fire, damage to armor, damage to health, and, out of cover damage. These are stats that you can actually select and invest into. And of course, there's other minor ones, like ammo capacity and magazine capacity and all that stuff that, isn't really like a primary investable thing. When you look at skills themselves, though, all of that stuff is linked so much to skill tier that you can't really get away from it. If you want to have radius on a skill, you have to invest in skill tier. You can't get it from any other source. You can't get any of these options from outside of the skill tier system, which sucks. So if you didn't want to have a huge damage seeker mine, and let's say you just wanted to have a fast moving, huge radius seeker mine, just basically you wanted to hit the enemy, maybe not kill them right away, but you just wanted to hit them and have a more guaranteed amount of damage to them. You can't do that. If you wanted to have a large radius chem launcher, for example, you can't do that outside of the skill tier system. And that's the problem, because all you can invest into are skill damage, explosive damage, haste, duration, and status effect. You can't choose any things that actually make a skill unique or feels good to you and your playstyle, because it's just not there. There's no options for it. Everything's either tied into the skill system or it's just not there. And that's terrible. I don't want to have to invest fully into skill tier just to get health on my shield, right? Yeah, you can get armor. You can do it for armor. But there's no real health options for skills. Okay? There's no radius options for skills. And a lot of that stuff is annoying. I mean, I liked some of the aspects of the original system, going back to, like the Defender drone, or going back to, the Bombardier drone, where you could actually choose how many bombs you wanted on your drone, how many, or how big of a radius you wanted on that. And that was the benefit of having the skill power system, because you could individually choose what aspects of a skill you wanted to benefit. This one, you get no choice whatsoever, and you're basically given a cookie cutter, and you're told that's all you're getting. If you actually want to have anything that's effective, you need to invest into all these little side options. If you're a gun damage build, I mean, you know that if you invest into weapon damage, you are getting a huge return. As a skill user, if you invest into skill tier, it doesn't mean you're getting a huge return. I mean, you might have a 30-second cooldown from investing fully into skill tier, which means that you're basically ineffective in most combat situations for 30 seconds. Investing into the other stats like weapon damage or armor are not tied to every other stat. So you don't need to have weapon damage just to get a usable crit chance or crit damage. You don't need to invest into armor just to get a usable armor regen or get a usable hazard protection, right? They're completely separate and give you options to invest into those things that you choose. With skills, it's not like that. You don't get these options. And a lot of them are completely useless depending on the type of build that you want. If you want a skill damage build, the only real options you get to choose are skill tier, skill damage, and skill haste. That's pretty much the main factors of your damage build. And those are the only options you can choose. You can't really differentiate between, I want to be a radius seeker build, or I want to be a damage seeker build, or I want to be a haste seeker build. You don't get these choices. And you may have actually been noticing in the background that I am playing a challenging mission at level 40. But what you may not have known is that I'm mostly using 500 gear on this build. And this exemplifies the problem that I have with skill tier builds. You don't need to actually think about anything. You don't really need to figure out any innovative ways to run your build. You just put yellow in yellow slots and you have a build that works. And that's it. It's incredibly boring. And I mean, if you want to say, well, there's talents and all that stuff that can make your build really cool, please. The talents are so obviously effective for one specific type of build that it's just not even a real credible thing to say that there's build diversity there. I mean, it's very obvious what each stat does, and that's all it does. And that's the only point of it. It's not like there's some sort of complex hidden mechanics here that, no one's going to understand right away. And I mean, if that's the case, if all the builds are depending on talents, I mean, I'm not even really using talents that actually affect my build very well. I'm just using yellow stats from my 500 stuff that I had. Now, I did upgrade some of my things. I wanted a little bit more armor regen because, I was getting sick of hiding in cover with no medkits and just letting my skills do the work. So I did, switch out my BTSU gloves for a pair of like level 36 gloves with armor regen. And it still had skill tier. I mean, basically, I think my armor went up from 146 to like 200 something. And, obviously nothing. I mean, I have 4 bars of armor, as you can tell. I was doing completely and utterly fine. And this is basically how I played the 31 to 40 campaign. I completed all of that stuff with mostly 500 gear. The only things that I actually constantly upgraded were my weapons. And the only reason I did that was just because I didn't want to completely rely on my skills. I could have, and it would have been easy. But I actually wanted to shoot the enemy, and that's basically the whole point of this update. The whole point of this update was to drive you to new gear because the enemies became super tanky, your weapons did no damage, and your armor was just incredibly, incredibly weak to the amount of damage that the enemies were putting out. So the entire update revolves around how much armor you get now and how much weapon damage you get now. That's it. Skill tier remains completely and utterly untouched by that. You can go from 30 to 40 with your skill tier system not changing at all. And that is stupid and dumb and lazy. It is boring for skill builds to play like this because there is no incentive to actually do anything. And this proves it. I can go through challenging level 40 with mostly 500 gear and not have a problem. Am I blowing through it as quickly and as insanely fast as I was at 30? No, probably not. But the mere fact that I don't even need to upgrade my gear just to do this stuff as a skill build is lame. It is lazy and it is pathetic. Now, you may not like skill builds. That's fine. I completely understand that some people don't like skill builds. But some people do. A lot of people do. And from what I've seen, a lot of skill builds are pissed off at this. Now, some people like it. Some skill builds like it. But overall, I think once they actually start grinding this stuff out and start realizing some of the problems with the builds, you know, and especially once they nerf skill builds in PvP, because apparently having, you know, explosive damage resistance and hazard protection on your actual rolls itself is still too complicated for our buffoon gun using friends. Now, obviously that's not saying that all gun users are buffoons, but you know what? Like, some of these people are just straight up pathetic. I mean, you feel, oh, I don't want to be forced to use this. I don't want to be forced to use this. You know what? Skill builds are forced to use every freaking thing because that's what they're given in this game. They have to use this. And you're complaining about having a choice of using this or this. I wish we had choices. I wish we had the variety of build diversity that other builds that aren't skill users do. I mean, there's a lot of variety for armor users and there's a lot of variety for weapon users. There is not a lot of variety for skill users besides the token stuff that they throw at us. And this is why I am kind of tired of TU8. Now, the content in the actual Warlords of New York, that was great content. And if you actually took away, you know, the things that I dislike about TU8, it would be a great DLC. Alright guys, that'll do it for me in this video. Thank you for watching. I hope you understand my point of view, and I will see you in the next one.